Welcome, Amanda. What's new?
Not much. Excited to get magical.
Yeah, we have a magical show today. Murray the Magician from Pawn Stars. Have you seen the Murray the Magician episode?
I have not. Who is Murray the Magician?
I think he made a Ferrari disappear on America's Got Talent, and he was on a pawn. He was the expert. He was the resident expert on Pawn Stars for a Houdini jacket or some shit like that.
So we know two people that have been on Pawn
Yeah,
Stars.
we got to get Ryan from Celebrity Cars with the Tupac BMW on here sometime.
Yeah, come on, Ryan.
Shit. All right. Welcome. There he is. Murray, welcome to the show. So let's start with the Ferrari. I understand you made a Ferrari disappear on America's Got Talent.
Well, I made the Ferrari actually appear, and what it was is
appear.
America's Got Talent. This is back in 2010, so it's about 14 years ago. Is that right?
Oh, yeah.
And they kept approaching me the first few seasons because Jerry Springer hosted it way back. Regis Philbin, this is when it first started. And I didn't want to go on it because they were looking for more of gong show acts, making you look bad. So here you work 12, 15 years of your life, and then you do one thing wrong and they make you look bad. It's almost the Jerry Springer of variety acts. I thought, well, it's not the way to go. And then they kept approaching me. I watched the show and I realized I needed to do something on TV that hadn't been done on the show. And if I ask somebody in the Midwest, what do you think of a magician? What do? They pull a rabbit out of a hat, they make an elephant disappear, they produce a car, big things. So I tried to play commercially into what I was using for television. I realized it was a big show. And so I said, well, let's make a car appear. No one's done that. It's great TV. It's, and you guys have the production budget to do it. So when I auditioned for them a few times, they said, we want you on, let's just do a card trick. I'm like, no. I said, I want to make a car appear. I said, well, let's do that like the second or third round. I said, no. I'm only happy just one round. I know I'm not going to win. You just, you give me good exposure. I'll give you some great, cool magic. And then finally, I said, look, Murray, promise to make you do the car appearance. Just do one quick illusion to get you in the show. And then once we get you on your way to Hollywood, you can produce a car. Because the theaters we're working on can't fit a car on the stage. That's the problem.
Got it.
So I said, all right. So I bent that way. We did one quick illusion. And then the next time, actually here in Las Vegas, we made the Ferrari appear at the Palms Hotel in the big room there, the Pearl. And that's where we actually shot that season of America's Got Talent, at least for the Vegas edition.
Murray, how did you get into magic?
I'm from Vancouver, Canada originally, so I'm Canadian. I've been in the States now, about 30 years now. And I loved entertainment, My mom was a legal secretary. My dad worked for the railway, but he also loved entertaining. He was a musician. He played accordion, banjo, keyboard, never read a lick of music in his life. He could just pick up an instrument, hear the music and play it. He just had that gift. So we did all that, and he also was a very good baseball player. But back in the day, this is back in the 50s, 60s, baseball didn't pay what they pay now. And so his father said, well, if you want to have a real job, a real life, support a family, go get a real job, which was back in the days of being a plumber, electrician, work for a telephone company, post office worker, anything that was a government job, you were set for life in the sense of having a retirement plan. So he went to work for the railway and, of course, set himself up great, but he always loved entertainment. So I think that's where I got my entertainer side from. And I just loved doing magic. I loved, as a kid, I got a magic kit when I was 7. Lasted for 2 seconds, because nothing lasts longer when you're a kid. And then when I was 12, turning 13, got another magic kit from my aunt and uncle. And it kind of stuck, because I'd already been playing music at that time. I danced professionally, because I always loved getting the attention and the entertainment on the stage. And magic was just another vehicle. And I thought, well, that's kind of cool. Let's just use what I know how to on stage, meaning dancing, performing, sharing, selling yourself, and put magic behind it. So I kind of had a really good time with that. Then I started doing kids' birthday parties, made $50 a birthday party for a half an hour show on the weekends. And I would do 2 to 5 shows a weekend. So as a kid who's like 13 years old, making like $250 on a weekend, doing tricks for a living, well, heck, you're like, that's a lot of money for a kid of that age, So, yeah.
Cool. So when did you kind of reach the next level where you were performing at the clubs and kind of the more professional venues?
I did the birthday party thing for years. I was young. I was 13 when I started performing professionally, making money. And I think my first show was like July 1989, way back in the day. And I did my aunt and uncle, Bill and Eileen Mallory's grandkids' birthday party. They're my parents' best friends. I called them Uncle and Aunt. And I just thought it was really cool. So I could do that. Because I'd go to rec centers, put up little ads, you rip a phone number off, $50 birthday party for your kids, and people would call. And then I thought, well, how do I get to be more of an adult level? And then once in a blue moon, I had a Yellow Pages ad, because there was no computers back then. Internet wasn't around, so it was an easy way to advertise. And in Yellow Pages ads, if anyone remembers, you want to get the top ranking, right, on the list. So if somebody looks up magicians, you go down in Yellow Pages there, right? Well, my name is Murray Sawchuck, so, I mean, I'm further down the alphabet. So my name was Magic with Murray, but I decided to change it to Magic with Murray.
Right.
So when you put the 3 A's ahead, you get top of the listing.
Aardvark the magician must have been super pissed about this.
Yeah, he was very upset. He was Aardvark is what he was.
Aardvark to Aardvark. When did you start playing at the clubs or the venues?
Well, I started I wanted to push for adult clubs, so I started writing agents that would book these clubs more and more. And of course, I was a young kid, so I started doing magic competitions so I could be good, because I wasn't on TV much. I had to win an award. I had to show some worth that I was good at something. So I'd enter magic competitions, get some awards, use that, try to get in the newspaper, which I did. And then I started doing 1 or 2 adult shows at Christmas or corporate shows. That's when people book things. And then I thought, I got to start changing my vocabulary, change my magic, make it a little more adult friendly and entertaining. And then I thought, cruise ships are a great way to work. And all my friends were working on, they're seeing the world, they're making good money at the time. And I thought, let's try this. So I started pitching cruise ships when I was like 16, 17. And then finally at 19, going into 20, I got a call from an agent, still a friend of mine at home, John Whitefoot. And he said, Murr, I got a job for you, $1,100 a week on a cruise ship starting Friday out of Montreal going to New York. It's 7 days down and then 7 days back. So then you go through New York back to Montreal, Canada, down the St. Lawrence River, stop at Bar Harbor, Maine, Cape Cod, all that, the little canal there, of course. And I said, let's do it. So I signed a 2-month contract on a cruise ship. And he said, hey, I need 2 45-minute shows and a 15-minute. I said, do you got it? I'm like, of course I do. And I hung up the phone. He says, great. This is a Tuesday. He says, well, you're leaving Friday. I said, wow. I said, really? He said, yep, we'll send you the flights, get an American bank account for my commission, send me a bunch of checks every 2 weeks for 15% commission or whatever, and then you're on your way, we'll get you tickets. And I said, great. I hung up the phone, did a backflip because I couldn't believe I got a real gig in magic. I was making $1,100 a week, American. And remember, I'm Canadian, so at that time with the exchange rate, like now, that's about $1,800 a week Canadian, which is, I never thought I'd make that much in my life. And I thought, here we go. And I thought, wait a minute, I only have 20 minutes of adult material. And I need 2 45-minute shows and a 15. Well, the 15-minute thing, I knew I could fluff over a little bit. The 2 45s, that's got to be a proper show, beginning, middle, and end. So I opened up a catalog called Tannen's Magic, really famous magic shop in New York City, one of the biggest shops in the world. And I would go through it. So I called them. I ordered about $500 worth of tricks to be delivered to the New York port. So I had enough magic to get me from Montreal, Canada to New York. So I had a show that could barely get through, adult-ish. Some of my kids' tricks I made more modern. And then in that port that day, I picked up another hour of magic, which I'd never done in my life. I stayed up for 3 days straight on this cruise ship trying to figure out how this stuff worked. And I put another 45-minute show together. So on the way back to Montreal, I had a show. Did it that Thursday night. And I got extended for 5 more contracts. And I stayed 7 months on the cruise ship. So that was kind of my start to being an adult entertainer.
Tell me more about that. When did you start working on your personal brand? You have sort of an iconic look. When did that all evolve?
When I was younger, in my teens, I had Brad Pitt was coming out, really superstar, right?
Right.
I was in his teens, so he had long, shaggy blonde hair, good-looking kid all back in the day. And I liked that, so I grew my blonde hair longer. So it kind of was shaggy. I would slick it back for shows, comb it to the side, make it look nice. And then for Halloween, I didn't know what I wanted to go with once. And my buddy Frank, he was my best friend back at home, still around, he's a chiropractor now. I said, what do you want to go as? I said, I don't know. I said, let's just wear black suits. And let's spike our hair up really high. Get that hairspray paint you can buy at Halloween, the orange and greens or whatever. And let's just spike it up. And then on the back of our jackets, let's put an upside down triangle, which at the time still is the logo for Guess jeans. I guess.
Right.
And I thought, I don't know what the hell I want to go as. Let's go as the white triangle in the back of our jeans or our jackets. Spike our hair up, red and orange or whatever. And we're all black, and that's it. And then people ask what we are, just go guess. And it's got the guess symbol in the back, because we didn't know what the hell to go with.
Right.
So, and he had long red hair, so we spiked it up really high, and that was it. And a lot of people were like, man, you look like Fido Dido. You look like Max Headroom. You look really cool with your face. That looks cool.
I recall you were on a few episodes, or at least one episode that I remember, of Pawn Stars. Is that right?
My favorite episode starting out way back was a Houdini straitjacket we brought on the show. Because Houdini had a ton of jackets. He went through them all the time. And he had this thing, and there was proof that it was actually Houdini wearing it. Long story short, we found a photo of actually Houdini wearing it back in 1915. And remember, photos back then were 1 in a million. But back then, to take a photo, you had a camera, a big flash bulb that had a big smoke thing off it. And if you got the picture right, you're lucky to get one picture. Well, we found this picture, and the jacket was in the picture, and it was the same damn jacket. And so I think Rick offered, the guy wanted 35 or 40,000. I think Rick offered 28,000. And I think I praised it around 35. Anyways, Rick didn't get it. The guy took it, sold it for 117,000 on Christie's. And Rick's like, I really should have given that guy that 40,000. Because we had the picture that Houdini was wearing it.
So we're talking about Houdini, but who were your favorite magicians? Who were your inspiration?
The magicians I really look up to now is my mentor, Mr. Electric, Marvin Roy. He lit light bulbs in the palms of his hands for over 50 years. In like the 1940s, like 1980s, take a bulb. You know, remember, electricity was only invented in the early 1900s. So he was taking a bulb, holding it, and lighting it up. Like, that's pretty phenomenal in the 50s, you know? So he had this act, and he toured Liberace and all that. So he's one of my favorite acts, also my mentor. And then a magician named Cardini, very famous in the 30s and 40s. And he'd come on, and his whole set was walking on stage, but he'd be walking on stage as if he was walking into the entrance of the Plaza Hotel in New York City, very posh. And then his assistant was a bellhop. Swan was her name. She had a little pillbox hat, velvet thing with like a bellhop like you'd see in the old days. And he'd walk in almost as if he'd had too much to drink a little bit, just a little loose. And he'd try to light a cigarette, and he'd take a cigarette out. And as the cigarette got to his mouth, it wasn't there anymore. He'd open it, take another cigarette, and you'd see the cigarette. But by the time he brought it to his mouth, it was gone. And he was shocked at the same time. And every time he put the cigarette in his mouth, it would be backwards. The filter would be the wrong way. And he'd take it, put it back in it, and you're looking at this going, how? And he'd be fooled at the same time you are. And then he'd take a deck of cards out, and there'd be no cards there. And he'd fan the cards beside his head, and looking at it, he'd bump into the cards. So he was fooling himself at the same time. He was doing magic to us, which of course he knew what he was doing, but it was an amazing act. And you can find online now some old footage of him doing it. His name was Cardini.
Cardini. I may have to note that down. Cardini. We'll watch that with Cardini. We'll watch that later. Thank you, Murray. Great to see you here. Thank you, Murray, and thank you, Amanda, for joining us again.
Thank you.